You probably have read about these bullet ammunition vending machines in parts of America that have been popping up. And of course, the anti-gun community, people that don't like guns, are starting to write articles attacking them for various reasons. I want to talk about these ammunition vending machines in the context of gun culture and some lessons we can learn from our friends, believe it or not, in the movie business. Stay tuned. Let's connect the dots when we get back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and author of the brand new best-selling book, Israel Disarmed: What the 10/7 Attacks on Israel by Hamas teach Americans about the right to bear arms. Just like we're learning about free speech from watching what's going on in the United Kingdom, we must learn about the Second Amendment from looking at mistakes others have made, including the Israelis in the run-up to the October 7th, 2023 terrorist attack in which over 1,000 people were killed. Again, we must learn the lessons of mistakes that other people make so we don't make those same mistakes here in the United States, because as I always like to say, smart people learn from the mistakes of others. Okay, folks, so you probably have seen some articles about bullet vending machines or cartridge vending machines or ammunition vending machines, depending on how they're describing who's writing the article, that have occurred or have been popping up where you can buy ammunition at a convenience store or outside a store, whatever it is, no different than you can buy anything else in a vending machine. Like if you go to the airport now, you can buy electronic equipment, you can buy glasses, whatever it is. Okay, vending machines. And I want to talk about my thoughts on these. I just want to put it into a bigger context, though. I think overall, I want to talk about at a 30,000-foot level, if you will. I think it's very important, and I wrote about this in my book several years ago called First They Came for the Gun Owners, the importance of maintaining and keeping our long-standing American tradition of private gun ownership with the self-defense component. And what I mean by that, and it's very important to understand this, not only is American life, American culture, going back to even before we were a country, American cultural traditions was that we were a gun culture. But we were not just any kind of gun culture. We were a particular type of gun culture. Specifically, we were a gun culture that was focused on using firearms for, among other reasons, for self-defense against various forms of tyranny, whether that tyranny could be Indian attacks, criminals, terrorist attacks, tyrannical government. That's why we have a Second Amendment, of course, to stop a tyrannical government as another check and balance in addition to all the other constitutional checks to make sure a government doesn't get too tyrannical or doesn't become tyrannical. All of these things are tradition. Now, this is important to understand that distinction between a self-defense oriented private gun culture on the one hand, which we have here in the United States, and a hunting gun culture, which you see in many parts of Europe, such as the United Kingdom, where people are allowed to have guns, but they're only allowed to be used for, let's say, skeet shooting, sporting clays, or hunting, things like that. They're not allowed to be used for self-defense. As absurd as it is for us Americans to understand, that's the reality in the United Kingdom and in much of Europe. We're not Europeans and we're not British. We resolved this debate in 1776, as you well know. Now, the reason why I want to tie this in to why I like, as a general matter, the notion of ammunition vending machines as a concept is because, again, it allows Americans to continue to recognize the ongoing normalcy of firearms. Because up until relatively recently, everyone viewed guns across America as a normal part of our lives. It's just a tool, no different than a toolbox or a hammer or what have you. And only recently has there been this attempt to try to disarm Americans with these ongoing groups and these folks and these academics that are trying to disarm Americans for a whole host of reasons, which we can get into in a separate video. But back in the 1950s, in the 1960s, the 1970s, when I was growing up in the 1980s, for example, it was not unusual. In fact, it was very much the norm to be watching TV at night in prime time and watch good guys wearing white hats with firearms solving social problems and stopping bad people from doing bad things to good people with using firearms to advance the good guys, to advance good over evil. Whether it be, let's say, watching shows like Gunsmoke, The Lone Ranger and Tonto, of course, whether it be going back even further to the original FBI series in the 1960s and 70s starring Efren Zimbalist Jr. Some of you may remember that was before my time, but I'm aware of it because I'm familiar with the entertainment industry and the history of it. So the point is that there's always been a gun culture in America. So I think that having these vending machines of ammunition is consistent with that, to maintaining the normalcy of gun ownership and gun culture. Now, let me give you an example in the real world of the dangers of losing one's culture. And I just want to use this example of movie theaters. You're like, oh, Mark, what's the connection between movie theaters and gun culture? And it's quite simple. Let me just read you what one columnist described about the current state of movie theaters, meaning going to the theater, the tradition in America of going to the theater, because for many decades, Americans would go to the theater all the time, once a week, whatever it was, every weekend. It was a cultural experience. And then, of course, something changed. This writer did a great job summarizing what happened and where we are today when it comes to going to the movies at a theater. Between at-home streaming, strikes in Hollywood that halted film productions, and a pandemic that required would-be moviegoers to stay at home, theaters have not had an easy time. Theater chains have closed dozens of theaters in recent years, and as of last year, ticket sales were still a third lower than they were in 2019. Now, the point being is, many people would go to the movie theaters as a matter of culture, as a matter of habit. And then for those various reasons, the pandemic in 2020, the various writer strikes and other strikes associated with making movies, and of course, streaming movies online at home, all of these things added up to many people broke the habit of going to the movie theaters. They broke this habit. And as a consequence, to some degree and to a large degree, many people broke the movie-going culture in this country. And now we're moving more to an at-home streaming kind of culture away from a going to the movie culture. So the point is that this is an example of how even a many, many decade cultural experience or a many, many decade set of habits that Americans may have at one point can be broken with enough work. And there is no doubt in my mind, in my opinion, that the anti-gun movement in the United States is desperately trying to do everything they can to destroy America's self-defense oriented private gun culture. And thus, as far as I'm concerned, having these ammunition vending machines or anything out there that reminds Americans of our ongoing national culture of gun ownership is good for America. It's good for our Constitution, because if you do not have a lived experience of using your First Amendment rights to go to church, to go to synagogue, to express yourselves online, to assemble, whatever it is, if you don't have a lived experience of using the First Amendment, you don't have a lived experiencing a lived experience of using and taking advantage of exercising your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, then there's a greater risk that Americans will simply allow these rights to become obsolete and become really outdated. And you don't want these things to occur. You want people to enjoy and experience and exercise these constitutional rights, because you never want them to atrophy and disappear. Because as we saw with the movies just recently, it's the perfect example in modern America. It is possible to take something that is hugely successful and a long-standing tradition and culture and destroy it, which I think we basically have done with the experience of going out to the movies. So anyway, I just say, just something to keep in mind. So whenever you see these discussions about ammunition vending machines, understand that as far as I'm concerned, anything that reminds Americans of our right to keep and bear arms and to keep it normal is a positive thing for America's self-defense oriented private gun culture. That's just my opinion. Let me know if you disagree in the comments down below. And I appreciate your time once again here at the Four Boxes Diner. Make sure you follow me on X, by the way. I'm doing a lot more content over there. I have over 17,000 followers on X at Four Boxes Diner. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. People keep saying they keep getting knocked off, so I appreciate if you could resubscribe just to be safe. Don't forget to like this video, and we will see you again soon, hopefully very soon, here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.